Hey, what's going on? You ready for some good conversation with Betty Lou and Shannon Schuyler? All right, fantastic. Well, sitting right next to me is Betty Lou, Executive Vice Chairperson at the New York Stock Exchange, the NYSE. Great to have you. Shannon Schuyler as well, sitting next to Betty, Principal, Chief Purpose Officer, Responsible Business Leader, PwC, President, PwC Charitable Foundation Incorporated as well. Shannon, what do you do? Ooh, here, let me turn this. You take this one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Technology, my problem. Well, I'm the firm's first Chief Purpose Officer. And so for us, a purpose officer, and our purpose is to build trust in society and solve important problems, and I'm the steward of that. So I make sure that as we look at our business practices, as we look at how we serve our clients, we're doing so to make sure that it is not only the highest quality and ethical, but also that it reflects society and what we should be doing, and things like diversity and inclusion, things like responsible leadership. We're doing things around the community, and that's what we need to do. We're a very large organization, 250,000 people around the globe. We have a huge responsibility to do what's right. And our purpose helps us to do that, both with our work, as far as what we work with clients, as well as with the community.
I always have loved your title. I mean, you just said when we first met 3 years ago, I was like, holy Hannah. I mean, people officer, that's just like fantastic. Betty, you and I know each other because journalists. But what are you doing now?
We almost have the same last name.
Yeah, well, on this screen we do. But I'm actually a UI, not an IU, but who's counting? See, even the Asians can't get the Asians right. That's what we need. A purpose officer. A purpose officer.
So yes. So the question is, what
do you do?
What do I do?
What do you do?
Yes. So when I joined, actually that is the number one question that people ask me when they hear where I am now, which is, as you mentioned, vice chairman at the New York Stock Exchange. The first question is, so what does a vice chairman do at the New York Stock Exchange? And I already have my spiel there, right? So I spent the last 20 years as a journalist, the last 10 at Bloomberg TV, anchoring, several of their programs. And during that time, I was talking to a lot of really successful people, CEOs, billionaires, millionaires, all these people who rose to the top. And I was very interested to hear how they got there. And these snippets of information were very interesting to me, that I thought it would be interesting to others. And so we created this library of their snippets and created this company called Radiate. That's what got bought by the New York Stock Exchange, and they brought me over, and they said, look, we want to curate ourselves a thought leadership platform. We've got 2,400 listed companies on the NYSE. We need to be tapping that brain power. So, that's 2,400 CEOs, 2,400 CFOs, and CIOs, and CTOs, and all those. And so what I'm doing is really tapping into that brain power and curating a C-suite leadership program there. But I would rather have her title, though. I think that's all right.
I'll take yours. We'll swap out back and forth.
Plenty of titles. I got this lame one just called news anchor, so I'm kind of boring up here. I wanted
You're the funnest title.
I don't know about that. They will probably argue no, but I want to harken back to the first panel, which was talking about fit or unfit for the top. Shannon, why are you fit or unfit for the top?
I'm sure people ask that all the time. It's been interesting. I have been with PwC for 24 years, so started when I was 2 or 3. And there's been a lot of change.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of change within women in a professional services industry over that time. And the one thing that I've realized hasn't changed is whether it's a male or a female, the person and people that need to sit there need to be, as the other panel said, confident, self-assured, really good at what they do, and really focused on the data and the integrity and bringing their best authentic self there. Mm-hmm. And I think if you are comfortable in your own shoes and not trying to be something that you're not, that's really significant. And I think for a long time, women were put in this position that we had to be a lot of different things, and that made it really hard. And I think I was able to come to the place where I'm good with me. And some people might not like that, but I'm good with it.
I like that. When did that happen? Was it yesterday? Was it 10 years ago? Was it 15 years ago when you said, I am me now?
Yeah, it took me a lot longer, and I think one of the things that I want to make sure is that younger people do it way faster than I did. Because I think there was a lot of doubt, and I grew up in a very matriarchal family. Like, women ran everything. And at the course of a 4-year period of time, 5 of those senior women died. And so by the time that every women in my family have a very short lifespan, so 65 is kind of where we cap out. And it wasn't until one day when Tim Ryan, who's our CEO, really said, you know, we need a chief purpose officer. And I was terrified that somebody would say, okay, so what is your purpose? Because that seems like a good question. And I'd be like, I don't know, I have none. And then it wouldn't be very credible. And so I spent a lot of time figuring out what it was. And I realized since the time that I was 25, I carried these cards in my purse and have them every day, playing cards. And they represent one for each one of those women that died. And I realized that my purpose was to live their legacy. These phenomenal women that never had the chance, one a caregiver, one a lobbyist, all these different things they did. And I realized that's what I was meant to be. And once I was able to embrace that, that opened up possibilities that I didn't have before. But it took me so long in my career to truly find it. You got snippets here and there, but not the full story. And people have to learn that earlier.
How long ago was that?
That was about 7 years ago.
7 years ago. How about you, Betty?
So I just have a couple of things that I want to say, but I totally agree with you, Shannon, on that. And I think you know, living that authenticity and living that, you know, finding that purpose or finding that inner mission or inner compass is so important, particularly in your leadership development. You know, one of the things, you know, this is really for the young people in the audience. I think for those who are more established in their
Why aren't you looking over here?
Because you're more established in your career, Richard.
It's the gray hair.
You know, I think that, you know, one of the really key things that I learned, that I learned really retroactively was, you know, IQ, and this I think many of us who are, you know, we're Asians in this, for those of us who are Asians in this audience, you know, we have.
Everybody's Asian in this audience today, because they all got their yellow and brown cards today just by showing up.
Right.
You too, Shannon. Thank you.
You know the Tiger parents, and you know they always say to you, you know, work hard, study hard, and I think that really helps get you through your 20s. You know, working hard, studying hard, you know, being the most industrious, productive person on the team is very, very valuable. But really, when you get to your 30s and your 40s and beyond, it isn't really so much your IQ, but your EQ that gets you ahead. You know, because you get to a point. I remember a friend of mine who was a CEO said this to me. He was like, you know, you get to a point at my bank where, you know, everybody who's you know, a VP or above, like they're all of them are the Michael Jordans of their own family, you know, or all of them are the LeBron James of their own family, meaning they're all very accomplished people. So what differentiates you from everybody else is not so much your hard skills, but it's your soft skills. You know, how do you relate to other people? How can you connect to other people? That's what gets you to the next level. And that really didn't dawn on me until, of course, I got into my 30s and, you know, and 40s and realized that was absolutely critical.
What was that same Shannon moment where you said, I am comfortable in my skin? And how long ago was it? That's to you, Betty.
Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
That I was comfortable in my skin. I think it was when I, you know, to be honest, like when I started to take more risks in my career, and you know, starting Radiate was a really big pivotal moment for me. You know, to be honest, like at that time when I started it, I was really looking for.
When was that?
That was about 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Okay.
You know, I knew that I was happy in what I was doing, but I wasn't growing as much. And I felt like I just felt that I wasn't being fulfilled enough.
Yeah.
And, you know, I could continue to do what I wanted, what I was doing and make a great living. And people were very, you know, envious of like your title and, you know, that you're on TV and all of that. But I just knew something was missing. And so I decided to take this plunge and, you know, and go and start a company, which if any of you have started a company, you know, is an extremely humbling experience. I mean, you're back to pounding the pavement, you know, you're raising money, you're knocking on people's doors. But I really appreciated that because it was a huge growth moment for me, and it really made me understand who I was.
So how many times have both of you gone through what you said 7 years ago, you said 2 or 3 years ago. How many, because for me, it's been at least 2 or 3 times where I'm like, oh, I'm in my skin. And then 5 years later, oh, I'm in my skin. You know, You know what I mean? It's sort of these sort of cycles. Has it happened more than once to either one of you?
Yeah, I mean, it's you build on each one. Like there isn't, I think people always think that there's like an overnight success story, and there isn't. You're always building. You know, you get to a level, and then you hit a bump, and then you get to another level, and you hit a bump, and each of those troughs, I guess you would call them, are learning moments for you where you grow. So, you know, what I described 3 years ago, you know, happened to me. You know, another incident would have, you know, happened 7 years ago or whatnot. So you're constantly building and evolving.
Yeah.
And I don't think that ever stops. Like I used to, when I was in my 20s, be like, oh, I think when you get to a certain age, you just know yourself and you know, like everything's perfect. And, you know, people just are, you know, they just know what to do. And that's not true.
What were you reading?
I was just, you know,
Yeah.
I was seeing all these people much more successful than me, thinking they've got it all figured out
Yeah.
by the time they're, you know, X age, and it's just not true. I mean, you know, I think you just continue to grow and learn.
It's like an S-curve of life. You have all these S-curves that keep on happening.
Yeah, it's a very winding road,
Yeah.
and you have to be open to that winding road. And I think that there's folks who decide to go through life, and this is where I'm supposed to be at this given time, and they miss the S-curve. And you have to, those things that don't work out are just as important, if not more important, than those times that it does work out. And those calculated risks to take, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, are incredibly important to take. And now I think we look at the society in which we live in, and you have to be reflective of the role that you as an individual play, the role that your organization plays. We need to own where we are, and that takes knowing yourself and knowing how you can be a part of that.
All right, so let's go back a wee little bit. If you remember walking into rooms and you check something at the door? My example, sometimes I would go to meetings or what have you, you know, oh, I think I'll leave my yellow card by the door. I think I'll walk in and they won't know I'm Asian. You know, I just go in and do my thing. And have you ever walked through the door at any point in your career where you said, oh, not consciously I'm checking at the door, but then you look back, you go, oh, I did try to check that at the door.
I think there's been times in my career that I've over-indexed on my audience, right? And so I have a feeling of going in the door, either I'm going to have to be this total badass businesswoman, and so I leave my emotional intelligence because I think this is what I have to do. Like I have to be this power player, and I leave the side that makes women so powerful, which is the ability to think through things and to emotionally be thoughtful and to connect the tough message with the sensitive message. That's what makes us different, and that's what allows us to be so incredibly powerful.
That's right.
And when you check that, you're leaving a piece that really takes away from your success and the success that you can add to the situation.
Amen. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
No, I would, yeah. I mean, again, you know, would absolutely agree with you on that. I mean, I don't know if this is related to what you're saying here, but
You don't know, in other words, I'm just mumbling over
No,
here on
no,
the
no.
left. Blah, blah, blah.
But I've actually thought about, so this is a very woman topic, right? I've thought a lot about like how I dress. So, you know, I remember when I first got this job, right? This vice chairman job. I really thought to myself, like, I've got to go get a whole new wardrobe and I've got to look like a vice chairman. So I've got to like wear super uncomfortable suits and look like I'm 10 years older. And I just thought to myself, screw it. Like, why do I need to look like what people think a vice chairman needs to look like? You know, I am my own person. You know, I got here because of my own skills and my own, you know, experience. So why do I have to fit this idea that, you know, of what a vice chairman, to be honest, which you traditionally will think is like a white man, why do I have to fit into that? So as I was getting dressed this morning, I was like literally thinking like, you know, gonna be here on the panel, I'm gonna talk about being, you know, in my role, and, you know, I should be wearing a suit. And then I thought, no, you know,
The hell with it.
I was, not that I'm like, I hope you don't think I'm a slob right now, but I think, but I said to myself, you know, I want to be who I am. And, you know, I think, and this is
So
not.
what does this say about who you are?
You know, I think it says a lot of who I am is I'm pretty approachable, I'm pretty humble. I think I've heard that in the prior panel. about, this sort of humbleness. I think that a lot of, people who are minorities or women have. And I'm just like comfortable in my own skin. So, which wasn't always the case at all. And I always felt most uncomfortable when I had to be, like you were saying, like had to put on this persona because that's what you're supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And that was when I was probably performing at my worst.
Well, just to build off that, I have a mentee that I've been working with for a while, and she recently got engaged. And so we were sitting and we were having coffee, and she told me she recently got engaged, but she didn't want to wear her engagement ring because it was big, and she worried that if she wore it, people wouldn't advance her anymore. Like that she had money, and so therefore it wouldn't need to move, and she was very ambitious, and she wants to continue to move. And then I started realizing, she goes, oh no, I dress very differently. I don't want people to know that I have nice things. And I was like, God, that's a crappy way to go through life. I'm like, I was like, we have to figure out how that's not a barrier for you. Because if you're waking up in the morning and the first thing you're doing is saying, how can I not be me?
Yeah.
Like, that's painful. And that's not something that's going to get you where you ultimately want to go.
Hey, what's male privilege? You've never experienced that, the two of you, at all, walking into meetings or rooms or having discussions with CXOs around here and around the world. What's male privilege? Either one of you.
The ability not to worry about what you're wearing in the morning. I mean, right? I mean, the entire, the reverse of, what am I going to check at the door?
Yep.
Right? Kind of owning that space and looking for others to change around you. I think those are things that I would think off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I think it was Jonathan Spector in the prior panel who kind of inadvertently sort of expressed that, which was, he said something to the effect of, like, growing up, he never thought about, like, that he couldn't do something, or that it never registered to him that he didn't belong, or that, he was not capable of doing something. And that, to me, is male is particularly white male privilege, for better or for worse. So, that's something that I frankly want to aspire to, that I want to be able to feel that way, but I don't, because there are certainly moments where I think, oh, I don't belong here, or I can't do that. And that's, you always have to check yourself there.
Yeah, I mean, I just learned that like a year ago, and I was like, holy, I mean, wow, for all the guys out there, I don't know if you ever thought about male privilege. You walk into a room, regardless of your color, it doesn't matter. You walk in and you have privilege just based on gender. And that is a fairly ridiculous, unsaid, but very obvious thing that happens. And we've talked about the symptoms of that, which are who speaks more, who speaks first, who repeats the idea, which idea gets put on the whiteboard, blah, 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 blah. You want to say something, Shannon?
No, I was saying, I think, in even the judgment that I have of what that means, I do think, and it was mentioned briefly too in the panel, around this whole notion of unconscious bias, right? And it could be conscious bias, so let's call that out there, or unconscious bias.
Yeah.
But when a man walks in the room, there are things immediately that comes to my mind. Same with a woman, same if you're African American, that there's immediately. And we need to slow it down and first question why. Why is that what I'm thinking? And realize that there's things that we take that we have to work through ourselves to change. Mm-hmm. And unless we find a society that is more understanding of, hey, you know what, I want to get it right, but I'm not always getting it right. Why is that? To question yourself and to question, why do those things pop in, and how can you change that stereotype to be able to approach it differently? We're not going to be able to go through rooms without the next person walking in deciding what that means because of the way that person looks.
Hey, you want to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, related to like that unconscious bias is also like this confirmation bias I think that people have. It's something that I studied a little bit when I was, doing a lot of research on leadership and management, which is people just tend to have confirmation. If they have a stereotype of you, they'll look for details that just confirm their bias. Whether it's that women are difficult or Asians are, introverted or don't speak up. They'll look for those traits. Whether they'll ignore everything else, but look for those things that confirm their bias. So I always think that a way to kind of counteract that is to do something or be something completely unexpected from what they would think.
You know what I like to do, because I get this a lot, where you're from, and I always finish the conversation and go, so where are you from? Oh, yeah, so where are you really from? No, really, where are you from? No, I mean, okay, so I mean, that's the, sometimes folks don't realize how they're speaking, whether it's that example or others, about mirroring in a very, non-aggressive way, just sort of. And they're probably going, why is he asking? Well, I'm just reflecting. Yeah, I'm just doing exactly what you saw. Hey, for the two of you, and a lot of folks want to really kind of understand this, if you can say this in 30 seconds, how did you get to where you're at right now? Like how did you get there? Like, people will often say, when you first meet folks, they'll say, hey, Shannon, how did you get these amazing titles at PwC, all these responsibilities? How did you do it?
Gosh, there's just so many answers. 30 seconds. I think it takes a great, and they said it before, network of people that support you. You have to be your own best cheerleader. I talk to myself all the time. Maybe it's crazy, but you talk yourself up before you get on stage, before you do anything. And then grit and resilience. This stuff is hard, people. Like, there are going to be days that are going to go really well and days that are not, but you have to be up for the next day and ready to go when it's here. And I think that's all about finding that within yourself and then continuing to drive it forward.
But I mean, you get asked that all the time, and it's in passing, right? And you want to communicate your heart and your brain in that 30 seconds.
So being stereotypically Asian, I have a formula here for that.
All right, here's a pen for you. Here you go.
No whiteboard.
Okay, where's your whiteboard? Exactly, yeah.
So I always go by preparation plus opportunity equals luck. So throughout my whole life, as long as you are prepared, and you make sure you are prepared for that right opportunity, that will equal luck. And that's just happened to me time and time again. People constantly say, "Oh, you're lucky, you're lucky." No. I wasn't lucky. I was just prepared. And then when that opportunity happened to come along, I was the right fit for that job.
Interesting. So when I'm asked that, I'll say, it's because of my folks. We grew up poor. Dad's a pastor, social worker. Mom's a school teacher. You get up every day. You put on your boots. You work hard at it. And it's because of that. Always don't take for granted what you got or what brought you, right? What brought you. Hey, what's your story? What is your story? I know we started earlier today in this great gathering of Asians and those who just got their cards today, by the way, as well, their Asian cards. What is your story? I know that they started this morning on that, and who wants to go first on that?
You mean just how we evolved and where we came from? Okay,
what is your story?
Is that going to be in 30 seconds? All right,
yes.
I'll try.
All right, I'll give you 60.
So I'm the daughter of Chinese immigrants. My family came over in the 1970s. Grew up in New York and Philadelphia, and like every good, as I mentioned earlier, like every good Tiger parents, they wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer, an accountant. Something with, my dad always said, somebody with a license will always have a job, no matter what. And of course, I severely disappointed them by wanting to become a writer. And it really wasn't until I got my byline in the Wall Street Journal, because as we all know, parents love brand names. And so when they saw the Wall Street Journal and they saw my name, then they kind of understood, where I came from or why I was doing what I was doing. And the thing I will just say is I kind of reiterated earlier, which was their advice and what they instilled in me was so important growing up. But at a certain point, my career or where I wanted to go kind of had to leave their advice of working hard, and that's where I started to seek more and more mentors. And I think that that's kind of what pushed me into the role that I have, which is, I'm a pretty good networker. I'm known for my networking skills or Rolodex or whatever you might want to call it. And I just didn't have a choice. Like I was always the outsider, so I always needed to know how to network with people. So I think just by developing those skills, that's kind of where I found my competitive edge.
What's your story, Shannon?
So I grew up in a family where everyone was teachers or school administrators, and so I was a huge failure to not go into teaching. And they all wanted us to, I have one sister, and kind of all wanted us to do different things. I actually wanted to do play-by-play football, well before women did play-by-play football, just so you know, it was way back when. and ended up having to come and take care of my mother, who was dying at the time, and then had to figure out what to do next. And my sister lived in Chicago, and my dad lived in Oklahoma. And so I said, I'm going to Chicago, and kind of tried to find out who I was. And I started out at a couple of recruiting firms and ended up at PwC. And at PwC, very untraditional path. I've had 7 different roles in 7 different offices. I tell everyone, you should be looking for your next job when you have yours. And so, you know, you should not stay where you are for longer than 2 to 3 years. Keep reinventing yourself and figuring out what that looks like. And I did that, and lucky enough that 7 years ago, I met my husband after we argued for a full year at a leadership retreat, and my husband is African-American.
This is a long leadership retreat.
I know.
Yeah.
South side of Chicago, and now I have an amazing husband, an amazing mixed-race son, and have a different commitment to the community than I had before, which has made me so much better and has changed my story.
Yeah.
Because of having him and his family in my life along with my family, and that has allowed me to go further and farther because I know myself even better now.
What does it mean to be a woman?
These are like, come on, people, one after another. These are hard questions.
Hi. Yeah.
Thinking about it, it's a very, very broad. That's a very,
Very,
broad question. Yes.
Really?
Do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I mean, of course, obstacles, you can throw all the things, glass ceiling, all the things are. I happen to think it is pretty amazing to be a woman. And to be a woman now and see the women coming up and see those women who have started to tear down that ceiling and get through. I feel powerful. I feel the ability to keep my head up and walk in any room. I feel the ability to reinvent myself. I feel the ability to make a difference in my community and in my family, and I can do all of those things. So I think it's a pretty phenomenal time to be a woman.
I think we'll take that.
It's hard to follow that up because I 100% agree. I do think it's the year of the woman. You know, I do, and I think it's been a long time coming. So I 100% agree. I think it's a very positive thing now, and it's just also us being in these positions that we are, a reminder to the women who are younger than us, to continue to feel that power. And to do better than us, So I think that's extremely important.
What's your brand? What's your brand, Betty?
So my brand is networking.
Networking, okay.
Again, and it kind of is weird, right? Like weird in the sense of, and I was kind of alluding to this earlier, where it doesn't make sense that someone like me, has this, Rolodex of people that I know that are in like the top echelons of business and, mixing and mingling with them and all that stuff. But if you look at my history and my background, being an immigrant, growing up in various communities, living in small towns or living in big cities, it was like I had to adapt. Whoever I was with, I had to adapt and find ways to connect to them. So that just bringing that skill, that was just the skill that I developed, and then I was able to then hone that even more and make a career out of it. So, whenever people think about me, they always think about, oh, well, she's got the great network. She's got the network, and I'm proud of it. It's not something that I'm, by no means embarrassed by. I mean, it's a powerful thing to have that network. But I also am grateful for it and don't take advantage of it either.
I'm known pretty much as being very authentic. I am who I am, and some people like that and some people don't, and I am a series of contradictions like many of us are, and but I will own it and I won't back down from it, and I'm learning every day to be better, but I'm going to give you who I am, and hopefully then we can work together.
We got to close, but in 10 seconds, what do you do for fun? What do you do for fun?
This is very TV of you.
Yes, I'm
you
very
know,
TV.
10 seconds, wrap it up.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Come on, wrap. No, 10 seconds. What do you do for fun? You go first, Shannon.
I run, shop, paint, play with my 2 puppies and my 6-year-old son.
Fantastic.
I can't think of it in 10 seconds. I have to be honest with you. I love to shop, eat, hang out with my teenage boys, and yeah, bake.
Great.
Bake is a very big thing.
Cool. And then I'm going to finish with a lightning round here. And what I do is I say anything I want, and you have to react with one word. I could say whatever I want.
I used to be on that side and would torture people this way. So
I can tell you
payback.
love what we're doing right now. Leadership.
listening,
Straightforward.
Collaboration.
teams,
Drinks.
Family.
Dogs.
boys,
Career.
happiness,
Longevity.
Network.
Robust.
long,
Weakness.
humble,
Crying.
Strength.
Happiness.
I would also say humble.
Hey, what's next?
Still in the lightning round.
Wow. Can't think that far.
One word. A lot of dashes in that one.
I really am committed to changing the fabric of our society around workplace diversity and inclusion. And we have to change it, and it's the time to do it.
And finally, I finish with this, making an impact. This is the title of our gathering today.
You know, I will continue to think.
No, one word. There's still one word.
I thought
They both broke it, but
yes. I'm confused now. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is making an impact. Giving.
Responsibility.
All right, thank you both so much for playing along. Thank you all for being here as well. Up next, don't go anywhere. Up next, we have a great panel, and I love the title, and you can probably see it there in your agenda. Of course, I'd like to thank Betty and Shannon for being so fantastic and just a lot of fun to talk to. And I know all of us would love to learn more from them and really opening our hearts. And that's the way we can learn from each other, as we all three of us understand. I'd like to now introduce the moderator for the next section, Lorraine Harrelton, President and CEO of Catalyst, who will introduce her panel topic and as well as invite her panelists. And while the three of us are stepping away from the stage, the topic of women leadership will be continued by the next panel with a focus on the experience and impact of women leaders in corporate America. And so it is my great pleasure to introduce Lorraine Harrelton, the moderator of the next panel.